I'm a brilliant person, unlike my sister. I'd rather not be seen with my failure sister.
As he sneers, I understood that my once beloved brother was gone. I've known it all along, I just pretended not to see it. In that light, it was probably inevitable that my brother ended up where he did. I'm just a regular worker for a local business. My father died a year after my little brother Rick was born. Because my parents have eloped, my mother didn't have anyone to turn to. She worked day and night and brought us up. That overwork took its toll, and her health began to deteriorate. By the time I graduated from junior high, she was no longer able to work as before. Watching my mother like that, I decided to get a job rather than go to high school. My mother told me, "You don't have to do this. If you want to go to school, we can manage the money." With your condition and Rick, there's no other way. I want to help the family. My enthusiasm unfortunately didn't land me on a permanent employment right away. For a while, I worked part-time and studied to obtain qualifications. At 18, I got my current job. In hindsight, I have some thoughts about how I couldn't get a higher education. But still, I believe it was the best choice I could have done under the circumstances. It wasn't all bad. My efforts somewhat stabilized financially. My mother's health improved and Rick went to university. The tuition wasn't cheap, but after his undergrad, he got a job in a well-known company. I remember that my contribution to their efforts made me happy. Rick's company was in the city, so we didn't see much of each other, but my mother and I were proud of him. However, recently, Rick's attitude to me was concerning.
Don't act pompous. You're only a failure who got poor education.
Because he graduated from university and he got into a well-known firm, his disrespect towards me became pronounced. I was shocked the first time he said this. Mother tried to tolerate his actions with no luck.
She's a failure, and that's a fact.
No one could mend his way with such words. True, I felt inferior next to Rick, but that doesn't mean I didn't feel sad to hear it from him. I tried telling him how I felt, but that didn't change anything. It even made me wonder if he was like that to anyone. A lot of times I couldn't be there for him. We were both busy in our own ways. Him being a student and I working full-time. I couldn't help but feel that it was my fault that he would lash out at me.
I'm getting married.
It was then when Rick suddenly came home and surprised Mother and me with the announcement. He didn't seem at all fazed by it. Rick never really talked about himself. So, of course, we never knew he had a girlfriend. Mother got all giddy, asked him about her, how the wedding would be planned, their future. Although, annoyed Rick answered them. Her name was Erica. She works in the same office as him. She asked him out first, etc. Unlike of him, he seemed a bit embarrassed like a young boy, and I felt somewhat relieved about it. My happy mother decided to celebrate by ordering nice sushi for the three of us. She doesn't drink, but suggested to loosen up and enjoy some booze. After a lot of shots, she blacked out cold. Although sober Rick seemed tired as he was leaving, he said to me,
Tell Mom that the wedding invitations will go out soon.
I acknowledged and replied, Yeah, we'll both be there. I congratulated him on his marriage, for I was really happy for him. I couldn't wait to see the big day. My brother, though, had a different thought.
I'm only inviting Mom.
He was irritated as he said this. Even though we weren't close, it hadn't occurred to me that he wouldn't invite his own sister to his wedding. It felt as though time had stopped.
Never mind. I'll get in touch with more details.
He went out the front door and I just stood there, stunned. A few weeks later, the wedding invitation arrived for Mother and me and I was relieved. But the very next day, I got a call from Rick, and the reality hit me hard.
You can come to the wedding, but don't sit with the other relatives, okay?
What do you mean?
I've told you many times before. I don't want people to know that I'm related to a failure. My supervisor would be there at the venue. I have a reputation to uphold.
I was to sit far away from my mother. Of course, I needed to look my best for the big event, and I wasn't to talk with other family members. I couldn't believe my ears. I was angry and confused simultaneously.
If you can't agree to my terms, I can't have you at the wedding. I'll give you some time to think, but think fast.
He hung up the phone after the one-sided comment. My first thought was, screw you. I'm your only sister that cared for and nourished you. He knew that I paid for his tuition, that I was his guardian while mother was preoccupied. My anger was justified. What with all his snide comments up to now and his rudeness in this case, I contemplated on not going. It was obvious my brother didn't want me there, and there was no win for everybody. But this wasn't my wedding, and it wasn't only up to Rick to make the decisions. If I didn't attend, my mother would be suspicious. Maybe she wouldn't be able to happily attend if she found out. I don't know anything about Erica or her side of the family. But if the groom's small family didn't gather for the occasion, that would be concerning. Compared to that, me repressing my thoughts and attending the wedding as a total stranger seemed like a better solution. Rick felt more like a son than a brother anyway, and being able to be there for him wasn't any worse than not going at all. I obliged to his terms, in which he replied casually,
If you say so. Oh, and explain whatever to Mom by yourself.
The day came, and I used work delay as an excuse to my mother in justifying the seating arrangements. As I went up to the desk, I found out that they didn't have my name on the list. I tried calling Rick, but he never picked up. I explained the situation to the staff, but they weren't much help. I didn't know what to do when my mother called me.
Are you here yet?
There was no use in hiding any longer, so I told her bits of what was going on and to get Rick on the phone.
Get in here, now!
Her orders were strong, and soon enough I was led into the family waiting area. The air was terrible when I arrived. Fortunately, Erica and her family wasn't present. My mother was mad at Rick, whom was exhausted.
Why would you keep this from me? If there's anything else going on, tell me here and now.
Her strong attitude wasn't what you could imagine from her usual self. I told her the rest of the story, in which she turned to my brother.
Why would you do such a thing? Do you understand what your sister did for you throughout these years? Is this how you repay her kindness?
I told you already, Mom, it's just a misunderstanding. Her seat is somewhere with the others.
Rick was vexed and acted as though it was nothing to get mad about. It was unbelievable how he could go so low, even for him. I don't know what hurt him while we were talking to each other, but my little brother wasn't there anymore.
It's too late to get you a place, so you can go home.
Unsure whether or not if he is capable of empathizing, but he tried to wave me away. I was, and surely my mother was as well, furious. So I replied in the happiest voice I could muster. Sure, I'll leave right now.
I'm going to. You're too much of a disappointment.
My mother followed me out. This should have hurt Rick, leaving him to explain to Erica why his family won't be attending their wedding. But with a rather plaintive look on his face, he replied,
I was planning on ending ties with a failure and her leech anyway. It was just sooner than expected.
I was offended. I did not want to deal with him anymore. Mother said she had something to do before leaving, so we left after we attended that matter. I thought that now things ended with him, I would never hear from Rick again. I was wrong. On our way home, I got a call from Rick. I kind of knew what he wanted, so I put him on the phone with the brightest sing-song voice. "Well, darling brother, what's the matter?"
What the hell did you do?
He didn't seem happy to hear me. If not, more aggravated.
Because you told Erica everything's a mess.
The matters we attended to before leaving was telling Erica and her family on what happened. That we were leaving and about how Rick treated his family this past years.
You went too far. What kind of person ruins a family's wedding?
I wanted to tell him, it's you, but I gulped down my words and instead said, "We did it for her, you know?" Rick still kept yelling through the phone, not understanding. I went on unfazed. "With what you've been saying to me all these years, who knows what you'll do to Erica in the future? Especially someone who cuts ties with his own blood. We did her a favor. It was up to her whether or not she'll go through with the wedding, and she chose not to." As if to relieve the past exasperations, I gave a righteous argument. I could sense Rick going weaker as I spoke to him. He seemed to realize what Erica would think of him now. He didn't talk back, so I thought this was the end of the conversation. But then...
I can't cancel the wedding. My supervisor's here. Saya, do something.
It was the weakest moment of Rick that I've seen. It was as if we were back in time, when he was just a child following me around like a duckling. But it was none other than Rick who crushed my memories. To him, what was given by others was his right, and he threw it away when it became unvaluable. Even though I was his sister, I wasn't a kind enough person to help someone like that. So with my best smile that day, I spat at him. "Why don't you do something yourself, if you're so brilliant unlike your failure of a sister?" I hung up on him and turned off my cell. We heard that the aftermath was terrible. Erica canceled the wedding, apologized and explained to everyone who came, then stormed off. Rick was blamed by all who attended, and the engagement was off. Rumors spread to his friends and colleagues, lost his place at work, and ultimately quit. It's said that he's doing odd jobs to survive. Feeling some guilt, Mother and I went to apologize to Erica and her family, but instead, they thanked us for informing them. I, for one, finally let go all those feelings against Rick and living happily in my hometown with my mother.